Thank you. And thanks to DTS for inviting me to do these webinars. It's a real pleasure and a privilege. And thank you to you for actually being here, because otherwise I'm just talking to myself and that would make me sad. So, anger. Let's see. We talked about last week how important it is that we accept, make friends with all emotions, not think of them as good emotions and bad emotions. And this is a really big starting point that I wanted to say again. So all emotions are valid. Some are more pleasant to experience than others, but don't think of good emotions and bad emotions. They tell us about ourselves. So sadness tells us when we feel a loss of someone or something that we hold dear. Jealousy tells us what we want in life. Fear tells us that there might be danger. And anger. Anger tells us a lot, and we're going to focus on it today. I want to just say two things. One is that I've done a slide. This is a printout of it, which is in the handout. So for those of you that like to sort of follow where I'm going and not get lost, that's there for you. And the other thing is that all of my words, so everything that I'm talking about and bringing to life, is coming from the range of resources that we've developed with Dr. Carol Holliday and Jo Browning-Rowe. So I'm bringing their ideas and knowledge to life. And just to give you an idea of their backgrounds, Dr. Carol Holliday, I've got to read it because it's a long title, and I am a bear of small brain. She leads the programme in child and adolescent psychotherapeutic counselling at the Faculty of Education, University of Cambridge. She's a psychotherapist with over 25 years experience, and she's doing ongoing research. And Jo Browning-Rowe is the creative writing supervisor at Lucy Cavendish College, Cambridge, and she's been published in the UK and the US, lots and lots of teaching materials. So we've got real experts, and we were asked about the lovely illustrations, and they were have all been done by Beck Barnes, who's an amazing way of bringing our dreams and ideas to life in these charming characters. So that's the backbone of everything that I'm going to be talking about. So if you get lost or want to know more, then the books are the just sort of more simple way of finding out more. So anger, it doesn't get a good press, does it? This little character, this little emotion, we don't like it. It can get out of control and it can cause all kinds of trouble. And consequently, there's lots and lots of books written about anger management. And I think the danger with the phrase anger management is that it's kind of easy to think that if you manage it, it kind of disappears. I'm talking with my hands here, but I've just realised that my hands are below the camera, so you can't see them. My hands are doing all sorts of stuff under here. So it's an emotion that we need to be respectful of, and we need to listen to it, and we need to make friends with it. If we don't, problems arise. If we don't express it in a healthy way, it can create problems and troubles. And I like to, in the book, we talk about tidy and messy anger. And I think that that's a really good way of thinking about it. That messy anger is where it gets bottled up, where it becomes accusative, where we start to blame people for it. And tidy anger is where we've expressed it healthily. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So what makes us feel angry? What is it? And this, when do we feel angry? We feel angry when we've experienced or we witness an injustice. We feel angry when we are frustrated because our desires or our needs aren't met. We feel angry when our boundaries are violated. And we feel angry when we're wronged. And as I sort of say those words, you know, the injustice, the frustration, boundaries violated and wronged, it just makes me say, wow, what an important emotion this is to listen to. What an important emotion to get to the bottom of and to help children understand, make friends with, recognise and accept. So that's where do we start in that journey of helping children? We start with you. You the adult in their lives. You are the most important part of this, you. And consequently, because you're so important, I think when we think about anger, I want to actually just take a couple of minutes now to think about your relationship with anger. So I don't know if you've got a notebook with you. Don't know if you can just bear with me and just think about the questions that I'm going to ask you now. You won't have time to do this properly, but if I can just set the ball rolling and then you take time separately, maybe talk about it, write it down and have a think about it. But these questions, let's get going. I want you to think of a time recently or a long time ago when you felt big anger. What had happened to make you feel angry? How did you express that anger? How was it received? How do you feel when you look back on it? And what would you have liked to have happened? Thinking about your family when you were growing up, how did the people in your family express their anger? And what messages did you receive about anger? Was it okay to feel angry? Was anger something to be feared? Was anger something that was brushed under the carpet or bottled up? And how do these feelings affect you now? And what do you do as an adult to support yourself? Now, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me now. When I was reading the manuscript for this for the first time, when Jo and Carol had sent it through to me, I had a real light bulb moment. And you know, when you have those light bulb moments in your life, you can remember exactly where you were. Well, I can. As I'm telling you now, I'm on a train going to Edinburgh, heading up to Scotland to meet Alice Sharp. And I was reading the manuscript and I read the first 20 pages, which is all thinking for adults. And I stopped, looked out the window. It was Berwick upon Tweed and I could see the sea. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've spent my whole life thinking about anger as bad, thinking about it as something to be avoided, thinking about it as something I didn't want, thinking about it as an emotion that was not allowed, and that wasn't the right way to think about it. So I personally had I need to think about anger differently. And it really changed how I felt about it. And that sort of embracing of it and thinking, oh my goodness, it's telling us important things. So just a start of a 10 really to say, take a little bit of time in your busy life to think about you, to think about how you feel about anger, to think about your experiences of anger in other people. And as we'll talk about a little bit more, to think about the behaviour of angry people differently from the emotion itself, getting to the bottom of why we feel angry. So, you're important. Let's think about children now. So, We need to help children recognise emotions, and in order to help them recognise emotions, we need in themselves, it's all about what's going on inside you, isn't it? It's not actually about what goes on your face when you're recognising an emotion in yourself, because what's going on your face, you don't see it. Not unless you go rushing to a mirror every time you think or feel some big emotion to say, how has that affected me? That's not going to happen. The emotion is felt inside, and it's not felt just here, it's felt in the entire body. So I want to just spend a few minutes thinking about how, working with children, we help them to recognise these emotions. So I'm going to bring in an angry friend of mine, the blockhead. So I hope this works. Here he is, look. Here's his feet. And step one, you see him. Just move the camera a little bit because you can't see him. So here he is. And his feet and his legs are feeling pretty angry. And his body, here look, it's feeling pretty cross. And his face, oh my goodness, you can't see his face. Where is he? And his face is livid. We created these blockheads because we wanted you in your nursery or childminder settings to have something big and physical to talk about with the children. There's a whole host of activities to go with them. And there's resources that work with the same illustrations, these blockhead characters. And I introduced you last week to the Feeling Funny flipbook, which is a really lovely resource that goes with it. And just because I'm doing this on camera rather than sitting in a lovely circle with you, I'm going to use the Feeling Funny flipbook to illustrate what I'm talking about. And I wanted to just reiterate that all these resources in this series have got the same approach, and they all come with thinking for grown-ups as part of it. So if we think about anger, think about how, just a little bit lopsided there, think about how anger affects our bodies. So here I've got a lovely calm blockhead who's feeling really happy in his little world. And then something happens, some injustice, some frustration. He's wronged in some way and he starts to feel something in his feet. His feet start to jump and stamp and kick. This big emotion has started. And then it goes up through to his tummy. And his heart starts pounding. It feels like he's got an explosion going on inside. And his fists are tight. And then it goes to her head. Now she wants to shout. She wants to scowl. She wants to bite. And her whole body feels this huge, huge emotion. So if we now have a little moment to read a poem about anger. I'm angry. I'm cross. I'm fuming. I'm mad. I'm fizzing inside and might do something bad. I might hit or stamp or scream or shout. When I'm angry, my anger just wants to get out. Now you might want to use some of those words in a song with children. So this is all about recognising the emotion, remember. This is all about building an understanding in children of how it physically affects us when we feel angry. So recognising that it makes you want to stamp your feet, recognising that it makes your heart pound, recognising that you feel like you're going to explode inside. it's really important that as that stuff happens, as children and adults, we can just think, like that detective we talked about last week. Get that magnifying glass. Like that detective, we can just think, hang on a minute, this is anger. I know what this is. This is anger. And to sort of support that, you might want to teach young children, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Well, you might want to change the words of that. If you're angry and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're angry and you know it, stamp your feet. So that you get, if you're angry and you know it, scream and shout. You get that sort of sense of this is what it's all about. And again, I'm just talking about how to help children recognise what's going on inside them and giving time for emotions, giving children time to understand, think about. It's really so important, giving each emotion time and space. And another thing, I talked about not rushing at and looking at a mirror, but actually using mirrors. Using mirrors with young children, these are just little ones that are good for looking at your own face. You can use bigger ones, obviously. But using mirrors is a really good way of building that self-awareness, letting children see themselves as we think and talk about happy and sad and angry and jealous. And these cards, using photographs, are a nice way of getting children to talk about anger. So there's no doubt what this little boy is feeling and maybe why he's feeling it. I'm suspecting that one of his toys has got broken and he's not happy about it. And on the back, there's activities to do with children as they look in a mirror. So imagine this has happened to you and you look in a mirror and start to see, show me what your angry face looks like. Show me what your angry feet look like. Show me what you're feeling inside your tummy. Show me how it makes you feel clenched and wound up inside. And they're just, it's just alternative ways of bringing emotions to life in a way that resonates with children in different ways. So another thing, when you start to get that recognition within yourself and you understand what's going on and you start to think, yeah, that's me, I get that, then you move on to how helping children recognise anger in others. And I'm such a big fan of stories for this, because story time and looking at emotions in stories gives you a neutral space. So it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about, in this case, Jack and the Beanstalk. So, Jack's mum, gosh, she wasn't just angry, she was furious when Jack came home with some beans and no cow. She threw them out the window, she was so cross. And then the giant, who I think gets a bad press, he was so cross because Jack had stolen something for him. And to sort of talk about, well, do you think it was okay for the giant to feel cross? Had Jack done something wrong? How would you feel if somebody stole something from you? Would you feel cross? And to sort of pepper in those questions in story time, such a nice way of bringing these emotions to life and helping children take that new knowledge that they've got about their own emotions and apply it to the characters that they love, in this case, traditional stories, but equally lots of new stories give those opportunities. And equally in role play, if you're in a setting in small world play, looking for and inviting and encouraging the characters that the setups that children are playing with. What would they be feeling? What would those characters be feeling right now, whoever they are? And as you do these things, you start to build a language and of being able to communicate emotion. And by language, I'm not just talking about words. The words have a big part. And I want to encourage you, I'm just going to put the screen down again. I want to encourage you to build your vocabulary, and make it easy. This is actually the little list I created last week for anxious, and I created one this week for anger, and then I decided that there was a lovely activity that you could do, so I chopped it up. So as I was creating the words for anger, cross, mad, annoyed, rage, livid, angry, it got me to thinking how important it is to talk to children about which words are more angry and which words are less angry. Which of these words is the most angry? How would you put them in order? I mean, I would probably say that annoyed isn't anywhere near as angry as rage. And maybe cross is not so. Yeah. So with older children, you've got a lovely activity which is talking about how they are relative to each other and the nuance and understanding of the words. And then I'm just going to put them away. The other little thing was I've created these little stones with all the emotions on. Just with a bit of chalk paint and pebbles off the beach. Again, just thinking about peppering the emotions into your environment, into children's play, probably more as a reminder for you, especially if you're working with young children, to just ask questions and talk about emotions in every context. And then, so the words and collecting the words and introducing words into children's vocabulary is one way of communicating. But also, here I've got another little one I prepared earlier. Also, thinking about emotions as pictures. And it's easy to think about fireworks at this time of year because it's bonfire night coming up. And so that was a thought that I had, that you could show that big emotion of anger as a fireworks going off inside you and make those pictures, but making them not just out of paint. These are lovely glittery ones. And actually it's glitter glue. Who knew there was such a thing? How wonderful life is. But making it three-dimensional, you know, anger's not a flat thing, is it? Anger's got shape to it. Make things fizz and buzz. And look at these little pom-poms with angry sparks coming off them. Was there ever such a thing that said, oh, look at that, he's really cross? Lovely ways of bringing anger to life in a picture, in a visual format that some children will really connect to. And then, again, trying to think about all the senses and give them, I suppose the other thing I was going to say to you is make it big. You know, so I did those tiny little things, but make it big. So if all the children do a little one, stick them all on a wall and put the big angry words by them. So it's a firework display with all the anger going. Or go outside and make big paint splodges and get a tough tray that's full of foam and put some colour in it and make a big angry picture, so that children can say, yeah, that's my anger, that's how I feel, that's me. And not just pictures, but sound. Think about using sound to express this emotion. And there's a nice little circle time activity that you might want to do, which is thinking about anger as a storm that rages inside you. And if you sit together in a circle for this one, and you can either do it with something or with just your fingers. So if you're doing it with just your fingers, you talk about the rain starting to fall. Get all the children to do little raindrop sounds. And then the rain starts to really drop, so the sounds get much louder. And then it's getting louder and louder and louder. And then stamping your feet. The thunder comes. I can't do stamping my feet on here, I realise. And then makes a big crashing sound. And then it starts to go down. So we're back to clapping. And then we're back to this. And then we're back to that. And then the rainbow appears. And just this way of enacting of a storm rising and falling, so that some children who feel the anger and will connect to that, will be able to say to you afterwards, that was me. Or when they're trying to express something to you, they may not have the long words, they may not have the poems, they may not even have the pictures, but they may be able to say, it's like the storm that we made together. That's how it feels. And again, there's different ways of approaching that. So, you can make your own soft rain with chia seeds and a Tupperware, trusty, or pebbles and a tin. It's really raining hard now. And the crashing of the storm. But all the children together, all doing it, rising and then falling. Just to bring this emotion to life and give children a language to talk to you about it. Because that language, that ability to explain and be understood is vital when it comes to emotions. And now's a good time to talk about tantrums, because little ones don't have that language. They've got a limited vocabulary. They've got limited control over their world. And hence the tantrums come, because they can't express all this frustration in any other way than this meltdown. And what to do when a tantrum is underway? Well, a small child experiencing this big emotion needs a calm adult. You can't, and a calm adult it's about how you are. It's about your physical, your calmness. You can't yell, calm down. That doesn't communicate calm. So you have to be calm, and you have to express that you understand. Oh, wow, I can see you're feeling really angry at the moment. And you might not say it just like that, but by saying something that expresses the emotion on their behalf in a calm way, you're giving voice to their emotion. You're saying it's okay to feel, and you're saying it's okay to talk about it. And then, not in the heat of the moment, because nobody can talk when they're feeling it big, but afterwards, ask what happened. Ask what happened. Ask why you felt angry, and listen and show that you understand. Just for those little ones as they build their language. Once you've got your language, once you've got your words, once you've got your pictures, once you're able to recognize the angry emotion and express it, you can then use the magic formula. I'm just going to show you this because it's a little bit wonderful. In the book. So the magic formula. I wish I'd known this a long time ago, but that's another story I won't bore you with now. The magic formula, I feel, is the first thing we need to say when we're expressing our anger in a healthy way. Not you made me feel, but I feel. It's my emotion. I feel angry, furious, frustrated, cross, a little bit annoyed. I feel. What is that emotion that you're feeling? When this happens, explain what it is. So if we're talking about children, it might be, I feel cross when you take my toys. Because, and this is the bit that we're all going to need help with, children and adults sometimes. Why do you feel cross about that? Well, it might be, if in the case of the toys, what happens inside you? Well, actually, when you take my toys, I'm worried that you're going to break them. Or I wanted to play with you. Or I wanted to play with that toy at that moment. And what would you like to happen? So say what you would prefer to happen. Well, I'd like you to ask me if I want to play with you. Or I'd like you to ask me if you can use my toy for a bit. And in having this way of working, we are enabling children to express this huge emotion and own the emotion. So it's not, the emotion isn't something that's done to you. The emotion is your emotion. You feel it. And it's what you do with it that can be good or bad. So the next thing I wanted to chat about was the environment. So I've kind of done you, the child, and the environment next. And in the context of the environment, I wanted to talk to you about the culture as being the number one important thing. And that's a funny thing to put in the environment, isn't it? But as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, the culture of your school, the culture of your nursery, the culture of your home if you're a childminder, the culture of your home as a family is the stuff that's in the air. So it's the thing that connects us. It's the thing that passes between us. It's what happens in the physical space, and it's the unspoken things. And therefore, thinking about the culture as a collective, as a team working together, deciding that you are going to agree some stuff together as to how you're going to help children with their emotions. So collectively, we all agree that emotions are important, that all emotions are valid, that there aren't good emotions and bad emotions, and that we're going to help children recognise them in their whole bodies, that we're going to help them have a language of pictures and words to express these big emotions. And then we're going to help them work out what they need to do as a result of having these emotions. And again, just in the little book of Big Anger, there's the anger promises, which could really well inform the culture of your setting. And all of us, so the teachers, practitioners, the children, and I want to say you could pass this on to parents, tell them what you're doing. We all agree that all of us feel angry sometimes, but we won't hurt others, we won't hurt ourselves, and we won't damage things. We will talk about how we feel. And if one of us is getting cross, we will try to help them by listening carefully, 2 ears, trying to understand, not laughing, and not teasing. Your promises might be slightly different, but thinking through what your collective feeling, responses to feelings, what you're agreeing to, and in that context working together to embrace all emotions. And then the other thing about physical space is having resources that make all of those emotions. So whether it's posters on the wall, whether it's thread heads, look, these guys do all of the emotions, whether it's the bag of goodies that's there, here he is, angry, whether it is the games that you play. So peppering throughout your setting. So these, I'm going to put this down just to show you this little game. So the Mudgy Monster game has got 6 different very cute monsters. They all look very different, but they all have all of the emotions. So here they are feeling cross and angry. But then if we look at our little purple friend here, he also feels happy, and he feels excited, and he feels calm, and he feels sad. Look at him with his own little cloud. Talk more about him next week. He feels frightened. He feels anxious. He feels jealous. He feels all of these emotions. And the idea with this game is that children collect all of the emotions like happy families, because it's another way of saying to children in a game, in play, that all emotions matter, all emotions are valid, all emotions count. And then last but not least, physical space. So think about your setting, your home environment, your school. Think about creating calm, cosy, quiet space where you can go and process your emotion. You can be on your own, you can be cozy, you can feel safe. Think about space where children can run and be noisy, because some emotions just need to get out in some children. And think about your shared space. And I've put on the handout, think about the loo, because I think the loo is a really important place for children and adults. So as an adult, your couple of minutes on the loo might be the only bit of peace and quiet you get in a day. So together, and I hope you don't think I'm bonkers suggesting this, but together invest in making that space lovely, actually. Put nice pictures on the wall, put flowers in there, put lovely soap, lovely hand cream, perfume, things that make you feel valued and special and cared for. And then in the same way, think about the children's toilets, think about their loos, think about their experience of going in. Don't make that room the poor relation, make it the best room to be in, actually. Give it real attention. Think about your shared space and what it communicates in the way that it gives you a break in your day. And think about your entrance. Think about that place where parents come, where children move from parent and carer to you and back again. Think about what you're communicating in that space. Think about how that feels. So I hope that's been helpful. I'm just going to summarise now what we've talked about. We've talked about all emotions again and again and again. All emotions are valid, all of them. They tell us so much about ourselves and others. Feelings and behaviour are different. That is a big one. And I read this quote last week and I'm going to read it again. Russell Barkley said this, and it's everything. The children who need the most love will always ask for it in the most unloving ways. And I think there's nothing that explains the difference between emotions and behaviour in a way that pulls on your heartstrings like that quote. And then think about you. Children need warm, caring, playful, emotionally sensitive adults. You're it. You're the one. So think about how you can look after yourself, look after your own emotions, so that you can be that warm, caring, playful, sensitive adult when they need you, whether they're feeling angry, happy, excited, sad, whatever they're feeling, so that you can be there for them and show that they're understood. And I see Kat's back, so it must be. So,
well, perfect. Thank you so much, Kath. And I know, as I said last week, I could just keep sitting and listening to your ideas and advice for much longer. But we've got next week to look forward to, so that's good. And I think I'm as balmy as you about the loo. school that we chose to display some lovely artwork of the children's in there. So yeah.
Well, that's a nice idea.
With the loo, so
Yeah.
don't worry. So it's such an important area for us all to address alongside that academic curriculum. So we've got a few questions. So one question we've had, Kath, is just around, I know you spoke about the magic formula.
Yeah.
And Nicola was just wondering, is that something that you think could be adapted and used for all emotions? That same approach?
Yeah, I think it could actually, definitely. Yeah, because I think if you just tried it out and said, I feel sad when this happens because, and what I would like to happen is, I think it works for anger, particularly because it's the one emotion that tends to spark a whole bunch of stuff, and you can end up in a whole load of trouble as a child. As an adult, you can end up in a load of trouble because you're not stopping and taking breath. So it does work really well for anger, though it requires you to recognise the feeling. It requires you to accept the feeling as your own. It requires you to work out why you're feeling it, and that's the bit that children will need help with. And then what you'd like to happen differently, what would make you feel differently and better. But yeah, absolutely. I think all of the big emotions that could be applied to.
Brilliant. And is there a particular age range Anne was wondering about in terms of some of the activities and resources that these are aimed at? Is there a recommendation in terms of the books and the resources, or?
Yeah, I think so. When we've created the books and the activities, we've thought about preschool children and Key Stage 1 as being our sort of core that we're thinking of. And then relying on the thinking for grown-ups, any age. As I say, me, age 56, I was like, I've learned so much from that. The activities would need adapting slightly if you are working with Key Stage 2 with older children. But I think the thought process of what activities and how you go about it, I think that it's valid for any age.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've learned a lot as well about managing my own emotions.
Yeah.
So I know that all children are different, but what might be some of those key signs or behaviours, if we're going to be the detectives that you talked about, for us to look out for in a child who is overwhelmed by their emotions?
Yeah. I think there's when it gets beyond just a little bit of a tantrum or a little bit of, once it starts to be a little bit day in, day out, something is going on. The sorts of things that might happen with a child who's, and we're not just talking about anger here, actually, we're talking about any emotion. They're just not able to process it. They're not able, they've got stuck in anxiety, sadness, whatever, they've got stuck in it. The sorts of things that you might see are them withdrawing from other children, from situations. They might be being irritable when they weren't before. When you know your children, the children that you see every day, if you see a change, then think about what might be going on that's making that change happen. They might be super clingy. They might not want to leave their parent or grandparent or carer in the morning. They might be reluctant to do something. Don't want to go out and play, for instance. Don't want to go to lunch. Don't want to go in the classroom. And they might be having sleeping difficulties or eating different. They might not want to eat what they should be normally eating. So I think those are the things to watch for that think actually something a bit bigger is going on here, and we need to give a little bit of extra thought as to help dig underneath and work it out.
Brilliant. Yeah, so always those children that you see the changes.
Mm.
Brilliant. And then one of the questions was around that some teachers are finding that they don't have as much additional adult support. So I know when I started teaching, a lot of children would get some extra time with a teaching assistant, maybe if they were having a bit of a wobble, or we wanted to give them some extra support. But that time's often being dedicated, particularly in the climate now, to catch up. So what would be your top tips or strategies in terms of how to explore these emotions with the class if practitioners don't have or don't feel they're able to give that time as additional adult time?
I guess there's a difference between the solving an immediate problem versus raising awareness of emotions and having an ethos of acceptance of all emotions. So my thoughts instantly go to two things. One is you and looking after you and how you are, because that's the most important part of this whole equation from a child's perspective, how you are and what you do. So you may just change your approach to how you talk with children. But better would be to have a little program running along where you're spending a little bit of time in the context of learning. So, you know, that you're writing a poem, you know, you read a poem about anger, you read a poem about sadness, and you get the children to write a poem if they're older children. Or, you know, we've talked about using story time as a really good opportunity. So you sort of have a little program going on in the back of your head that you're doing an emotion each week, for instance, during a half term. So you're raising awareness, building understanding, getting that sort of general feeling with all the children that emotions are good and that they tell us something, and let it filter through.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's helpful.
Yeah, no. So it is, I think it's that culture shift, isn't it, of seeing it as part of your everyday provision rather than something separate as an intervention.
Yeah.
So brilliant. And then we've got one final question, which is centered around break times and lunch times. So I'm sure a lot of people who work with children see that that's often quite a key trigger point for emotional upset, often based in anger, anxiety, frustration. Do you feel that any of these strategies that have been mentioned or that are in the books or the resources could be adapted during those less structured times of the day, or any top tips you've got for practitioners when those feelings bubble at that sort of time?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I would go back to the culture of you as a team working together. So whoever is on lunchtime duty, inside or outside, that if you're all the staff together are working in the same way, all practitioners have got that same approach when something happens, and that you're all talking about emotions and behaviour differently. I think that will really help those times for children. And then if in a particular child's experience, so, you know, if one child goes bonkers, creates all kinds of mayhem, thinking they were feeling angry, you don't need to be a detective to work it out sometimes. After the event, spending time talking with them, asking them why they felt angry, asking them what had happened, understanding it, giving them the voice that says you understand it, being calm, and talking and using the anger, the magic formula for, well, what would you have liked to have happened, and also what else could you have done instead of charging around and breaking things or whatever it was. So I think everything that we've talked about can equally apply outside and in free time and in lesson time. But you're right, free time can be a challenge. And having strategies, I mean, a lot of schools have got lovely strategies in place to help children make friends, to deal with bullying. You know, those are important things.
Brilliant. Lovely. I know we've got loads of questions coming in. We're just not necessarily going to have time for everything today. because we've overrun slightly with our 45 minutes, but it's been brilliant. So my first thank you is to Kath for giving us so many practical ideas alongside the theory and all of your insight. And then secondly, thank you to everybody for attending and sharing and contributing today.
I'm imagining you all.
I know it's very weird not seeing people. But, so it's just left for me to say, really, there are 2 more webinars in the series that you can sign up for.
Oh, yeah.
Webinar with Kath is next Wednesday on the 11th of November at 3:30, where Kath's going to be looking at sadness. So maybe bring your smiles to that one.
Yeah.
And on the 18th of November, the series will finish looking at happiness. Always nice to finish on a positive. So please do if you're interested. And as I said at the beginning, the webinar has been recorded, so you will receive an email within the next day or so with a link to watch the recording back. So don't worry if you don't receive it straight away. It can sometimes take a little bit of time. The email will also include a link to download a certificate of attendance that you can print off, and the webinar handouts from today. And there'll be the wish list of some of the resources that Kath has spoken about today, if you've not been able to catch them in the chat. So the only thing left for me to say is thank you very much for joining us, and we both hope to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. See you next week.
Thanks very much. See you soon.